Good afternoon, Seattle. I just noticed the door's still open. Euan, would you mind getting the door for me?
Of course.
Good afternoon, Seattle. Welcome back to yet another season of Le Freres Heureux. Here we are with season 10. God, it's just flown by, hasn't it? It has flown by. Only 2 full seasons left. Spooky stuff.
8 episodes.
I know.
Doesn't feel like a lot at all.
Only 8 episodes left of your favourite boys talking about Frasier. It's not a lot. And speaking of favourite boys, I am favourite boy Fraser.
And I am favourite boy Euan.
Yeah.
The other favourite boy.
The other favourite. The less favourite, but still.
Less favourite.
Still favourite.
Marginally less favourite.
We have some exciting news to share with everyone. We have hit our goal for podcast downloads that we initially set for ourselves when we started this podcast. So as it stands, I think we're sitting at about 10,000 downloads and some change.
Yeah.
Purely from podcasts. We have even more on YouTube as well, which reminds me we're also behind on some YouTube videos.
Yeah, we can get caught
Definitely
up
due
with
to
those.
my fault.
That's fine.
But yeah, we wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who has tuned in and listened and shared and told their friends about us and posted comments and followed us on Twitter and everything. It's pretty incredible, to be honest. I did not expect, as much as I was hoping we would hit this goal. I think at the start and middle, I was like, I don't know if we can. I don't know if people are that interested in us.
When we first started and we got maybe 12 downloads on the first day and then none. We got 0 downloads per day for the rest of the week. I thought, okay, this is it. Our friends have humored us and have listened to the first episode, and it's so bad.
It was like, this is going to be a hobby for us,
and
that'll be that. But the fact that we've actually gained some regular listeners who interact with us regularly, some interactions from like cast and crew of the show, and just generally a lot of nice words from people telling us to keep going. Some occasional critiques, which we're open to
occasionally.
But yeah, it's been good fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we move on to next.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited. This is a jumping off point to lots of other cool things.
Yeah, but we've still got plenty of Frasier to go.
We do.
Plenty of Frasier to go, so we'll worry about that near the time. We have left Daphne and Niles off at the end of season 9. They have run off together to get married, despite, I think, planning a more extravagant and larger wedding. Daphne, after her visit from her father, decided that it's time for the two of them to get married, right then and there, and thus the season ends with the two of them running off into the sunset. This season 10 picks off straight where they left off. We start with the ring cycle. The first steps are on the disc, and that kicks off exactly where season 9 finished.
Yeah.
They've driven for, I don't know how far Reno is. I don't even know where Reno is.
It's in Nevada.
Is it in Nevada? So it's near like Las Vegas and that.
Near, but I don't actually know where in relation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably a decent journey, a good few hours.
From Washington, it'd be at least a few hours.
8 hours or something.
Yeah. So they've driven off to Nevada to get married, to Reno, in a little sort of joke chapel, by this very enthusiastic patron, chaperone. What would you call him?
An officiant.
Officiant, that's the word.
The only reason that I have it written down, because there's actually an interesting fact about the officiant in Reno. I don't know if you want to wait before we talk about a guest star, but
go for it. Go for it now.
So he's played by Sam Johnson, who isn't an actor necessarily, but was a producer on Frasier for a long time. So he produced a lot of the episodes, wrote quite a few episodes, starting in season 7. I think Radio Wars was the first one that he wrote. continued to write up until the very end of the show, when he kind of contributed towards the last episode as well. But he also went on to do How I Met Your Mother.
Oh.
And also, more recently, the What We Do in the Shadows TV series
nice.
as well, writing and producing.
Solid shows to be involved with.
Yeah.
Very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And he's great in this, actually.
Yeah,
he's really funny.
He's very funny.
It's very, contrasting, the two of them getting married, very romantic, to just his character standing there, like, just completely blowing everything out of the water, making it seem as sort of grubby as possible.
It's tacky and
the
stainless steel rings and the topless buffet.
Was it 6.5 carat gold?
6.5 carat gold.
It's very good. And it's a nice little scene to get us started. It's got a good few laughs in it, and the rest of the plot is kind of kicked off when they get back to Seattle. They go to tell Frasier and Martin about it, and they're both kind of, they're not devastated because they don't know what's happened, but they're really thankful that Washington has a 3-day waiting period before you can get married, because they want to be a part of it. They'd be heartbroken if they couldn't be a part of it. And then that's kind of interrupted by Roz, who had phoned them the previous night and found out about what was happening. So the three of them are kind of hiding this secret from everyone else. And that turns into an even bigger farce when they go to get quote-unquote married for a second time, and Gertrude throws one of her classic tantrums because it's not in a church, it's not in front of a minister, so she storms off, but they decide to do the ceremony anyway, and it turns into even bigger farce when they decide to do it a third time. And Donnie shows up. Remember Donnie? Remember Donnie?
Poor Donnie.
Back in season 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Daphne's fiance, the lovely man who's reduced to a complete joke in this episode.
Yeah.
I'm really annoyed about that. I think that's probably my least favourite bit of this episode.
It is a real shame. It's one of the reasons that, and we'll talk about it, but it's one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of this episode.
Yeah.
Is that it's such a shame that this is the last we see of Donnie.
Yeah.
And it's just really kind of humiliating for him, and really taking a character that was introduced as being like very cool, very charismatic, very funny, and like charming and whatever, and clearly being like an excellent partner to Daphne, and turning him into like just an asshole who's obsessed with his ex-fiance. It's very sad.
Yeah, they kind of reduce him to this just one-line joke, basically, that the one line being that he is not over Daphne, and that is now his whole personality. He's spending his entire life pretending that he is over her, but he's not really, and it's just really sad. Especially when his assumption is that Daphne has decided not to go through with the wedding with Niles, and he's like, aha, now you know how it feels to be left at the altar, when in actuality she's just coming clean about the fact that they got married a few days ago.
Already married. Yeah,
to everyone. But Donnie aside, I think that scene ends really nicely. They all kind of have a little bit of a bicker at each other because they didn't tell Frasier and Martin initially, because the second time Roz and Alice left with Gertrude, so Alice didn't get to be a flower girl, and Gertrude has been lied to the whole time, and it's all, they're all just bickering each other. And then Martin goes and opens the door and he says, I've got a question for you. If you've been married for 3 days, why are you not on your honeymoon already? And it's just like, aw.
Yeah.
Aw. It's so sweet of him.
It's very sweet.
He just knows how to kind of calm down the situation, let them get on with it, and he realizes that there's more important things to worry about than this little argument. They are married, they're happy.
Yeah, they're supposed to be celebrating. Yeah,
they should be celebrating. So I really like that scene. I think that really just encapsulates Martin as a character.
Yeah.
That, he can be a bit annoyed at first, but once he kind of realizes what's going on, he is the voice of reason in the group. He's got this mentality that he can deal with everyone. He can handle these situations, and he does genuinely care about his family as well. I just love Martin. Yeah.
Yeah.
The episode overall, I think, is it's quite classic Frasier in the sort of way that it handles this farcical situation.
Yeah.
I think it's following a bit of a trend with Daphne and Niles being the main focus. The last couple of season openers and closers.
Yeah.
Well, in saying that, we had Cranes Go Caribbean, didn't we?
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about season 7 and 8. No.
Season 7 and 9.
Season 6 and 7 I'm thinking of.
6 and 7.
Where Niles and Daphne have played a huge part in the cliffhanger, in the tie between the seasons. And I think that kind of continues this trend where they're more the focus in this episode than like Martin or Frasier or even Roz, I guess, who is the first other character in this episode other than Daphne and Niles.
Yeah.
She features first. And that's not a bad thing. It is what it is.
I'm not against having a little bit less Frasier.
I know.
Now and again.
It's just I find it funny that the show is about his life, but he less and less he's the focus of the main plots in these episodes. Even going forward, I think these last couple of seasons, maybe season 11, the focus kind of comes back on Frasier quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so. It really does. I mean, obviously, we're getting way ahead of ourselves talking about season 11. We're not even starting on season 10 yet. But I think season 11, I've always felt like it starts to kind of come full circle. There's a lot. They go back into the dynamics of like Frasier and Martin living together and Frasier looking for a new relationship and stuff like that. They really dive back into that in the long-running plots, which is something that they've kind of ignored in between seasons 1 and 11.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting to get back into that. But for now, it's certainly like the Niles show.
It is quite a bit. We've got fairly hefty plot in the next disc.
Yeah.
That focuses very, very heavily on Niles.
On Niles, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it's like a conscious decision that they made or if it's just kind of them taking the whole cast and picking out stories that work in the flow of things, or if they did intend to kind of phase Frasier out a little bit in favor of the other characters. I don't really know what the writers were planning for the show, but anyway, we have the ring cycle. It is a pretty middle of the road episode for me, I think. Yeah. I gave it 3 whole cups of coffee.
3 whole cups.
Cheeky thrupper.
A cheeky thrupper.
Back on the cheeky thruppers.
Yeah.
I think it's a decent opening episode. I think I did rank it slightly higher, but I don't know. I think the first half of the episode's a lot better than the second half. I think the repetition of the weddings, they don't quite keep up the momentum quite as well. The first time they do so they have the first wedding and then they have the first time they do the
fake wedding.
Yeah, I think is very funny, and the idea of it, the line with Gertrude and Alice always makes me howl when Roz drives Gertrude in, and she says like, what is it? She says, back in my day, driving was much more respectful or whatever, and Alice says something like, is that because you were driving with dinosaurs? And Ross says like, when we get home you're getting ice cream. And I love it. Always makes me laugh. I think it's just such a great like little interaction, and there's a lot of like little moments that I really like. The bits with Martin, Daphne and Niles kind of just accepting that they're going to have to repeat this fake wedding a couple of times is really funny, but overall it has this kind of like lack of momentum towards the end, I guess, and shoehorning Donnie into the plot as well I really don't like. I think it doesn't make sense for him to be there. It doesn't add anything other than like a cheap joke at his expense. So it kind of brings it down a little bit for me. Yeah.
See, for me, it's definitely below average. in terms of episode quality. I don't think it's terrible. I wouldn't give it a 1, but it's quite sitting quite steadily on the 2-cup plateau.
The twoper.
It's a twoper. Yeah, it's like you say, the second half definitely drops in quality. I think that it could have benefited from kind of escalating a little bit, instead of just doing, we've got one real wedding and then we've got a fake wedding and then we've got another fake wedding.
Yeah.
That's basically the same as the first fake wedding.
Just
it's even in
people.
the
It's
same
like,
place.
Yeah.
They've got basically the same people there, whatever. If they had to sort of escalate it and pick it up towards a more dramatic second fake wedding that was like...
If Gertrude had dug her feet in, and they had to do it
and they
at
had to do it
church.
at a church, and they had lots of people there, and it was, more dramatic, that would have...
Yeah,
it
no,
would
you're
have
right.
benefited from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so I like the end. You mentioned the end with Martin kind of letting them out, telling them to go off on their honeymoon, and Daphne calling him Martin.
Yeah.
Now that they're married is very sweet, and I really like the opening. I think the opening is very funny, and the kind of jokes about Reno and the jokes with the officiant, and even when Roz calls Daphne and the two of them they're screaming at each other down the phone, and Niles says like, "Oh, obviously it's some kind of dolphin emergency."
Oh, I was gonna say I love the line where Roz is like, "Hey, my apartment's on TV. I'm gonna wave at you out the window," and Daphne says like, "What? Is everything okay?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. It's just some murder-suicide thing." I don't know. Like,
it's funny.
Really funny line.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot right in the very opening of the episode that's very funny, and then there are a couple of sweet moments. I think that at the end with Martin, and earlier on after they get back from the first fake wedding, and Frasier and Martin are now thinking that they've just gotten married for the first time. They now realize they're married. They give them the wedding gift, and Daphne kind of goes back and forth on what she's going to call them.
Yeah.
And kind of they go to, she says Martin, and Martin thinks she's going to say Dad, and then they kind of go back and forth. And I think there's something sweet about that,
it's
about
kind
how
of
they
welcoming her into the family.
Yeah, like officially.
Officially,
I mean, we've had a couple of kind of similar moments in season 8 when they started dating, and like offering her sherry for the first time and things like that, which is kind of nice. So it's nice seeing that. But overall, it's just a pretty boring episode. Having Donnie get kind of the rough end of it.
I think we can agree that Donnie's the worst bit of this episode.
And also, to be honest, the fact that quite a lot of the episode surrounds Gertrude.
Yeah.
I know that this is... I'm sorry, this is going to be a sticking point for me for many episodes in this season, is that Gertrude is a very annoying character, and the way that they... It's not even the worst of this disc. It's not. we're gonna get to it when we get a proper like Gertrude episode later on. But I'm just... So it's a 2.
Okay. Not our best opening episode. Not our worst either, though, I don't think.
No.
I think we have ranked.
I'm pretty sure I gave Good Grief a 1.
Possibly.
Because I really don't like Good Grief.
I can't remember. Well,
actually, I might have given it a 2 as well.
I need to go back and have a look over the spreadsheet, man.
Yeah.
I need to remind myself. It's so long ago since like the earlier seasons we've done.
Yeah.
Okay. The Ring Cycle, opener to season 2 of 10. It's okay. It's decent. It's not the worst. It's not the best. Enemy at the Gate is the next episode. And I'm moving on because I know there's no guest callers
in
the previous episode. And we've already gone over the guest star.
We've already gone over the guest.
Enemy at the Gate. Frasier and Niles are off to return a bird cage that Niles has bought for little Niles and little Daphne, 2 lovebirds that he bought. Or what is it? Songbirds?
Lovebirds.
Lovebird. It is lovebirds. Yeah. Whatever. Very bizarre, but okay. Frasier's giving him a lift to the mall. They pull into the car park, and Frasier realizes that he's actually on air in 15 minutes, I think he says, or something like that. And he needs to boot it to the station. So he pulls out of the car park, and guest star Luis Guzman won't let him out. It's not actually Luis Guzman. He's playing the
security guard. Playing the guy, yeah.
It would be really funny if it was actually Luis Guzman
playing himself.
Yeah. The security guard won't let him out without paying because he pulled in. He has to pay, and Frasier decides to pull a classic Frasier, and stick his heels in and refuses to pay on principle that he didn't actually use up any parking, and that is like the whole episode.
That's the whole episode.
Is him just arguing with Luis Guzman and Niles as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a little bit at the end where he makes it to the station, and there's this really bizarre like side plot of Roz accidentally she takes a couple of calls while Frasier's still late,
mm-hmm.
and accidentally lets slip that they slept together, and their listeners pick up on that, and then when Frasier comes back, it's all for the purpose of like one joke that he misinterprets what the listener is saying.
Mm-hmm.
The caller is saying when he comes back into the office, and it's really bizarre. It's like the last quarter of the episode they introduced this sort of like I don't know how to describe it. It just feels really out of place.
Yeah, a little bit. Like it's a bit of a stretch. Like the whole episode is a setup for this one joke
exactly.
Right at the end.
It's really weird, and it feels really weird, and I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And the way that I'm describing this episode so enthusiastically should tell you what I think of it. To be honest,
mm-hmm.
We've got a little B plot with Daphne and Martin.
Yeah,
Martin's trying to sort of coyly tell Daphne that he's going to miss her. He pretends that Eddie's going to miss her, and kind of explains to her through Eddie that he's a creature of habit and he's going to miss her not being around, and that's really sweet. But also, the way I described it right in my notes was it feels like a sort of webisode. And I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone other than myself.
No, yeah, I can see what you mean. It's very short. They don't dedicate an awful lot of time to it. And it doesn't contribute at all or have any connection with the other plot going on.
No bearing on the plot. It doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really sweet little plot. But it just feels really out of place as like the B plot of the episode. And it just, I don't know, the only way I could think in my brain to describe it is like a sort of mini-sode within the main episode.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, this episode's just all over the place. I really don't like it.
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, just Frasier being a Muppet and ruining everyone's day by holding them up in the queue, arguing over pointless things. I don't know. I don't like it at all, and I think it's just a really disappointing sort of start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's the second episode, but you know what I mean? Like it feels like the quality really dips. It feels like they just didn't know what they were going to do, and wrote this episode on the fly. I don't know. It's just lacking everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's lacking dialogue. It's lacking a decent plot. It's lacking a decent structure. Yeah, I don't know. I've ranted enough. I don't like this episode.
No. What would you give it then?
I gave it a 1.
You give it a 1?
I gave it a 1.
Fair enough. I was very close to giving it a 1. I decided not to, pretty much purely because of Luis Guzman.
Yeah.
I think is a great guest star. I think he's a wonderful actor, and I think he does a really good job of playing this, like, very irritated, like, he is the normal person that does not have time for Frasier's bullshit.
Yeah.
They even make jokes about what one of the other people in the garage that's been blocked in by him kind of comes up and says, like, look, it's easy enough for you. You're driving a BMW. You have enough money that you can complain about stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like, you are in a position of privilege and you
Yeah.
can care about these things. I can't care about these things because I've got a job to get to, you know? And I think it's really funny having a character like Luis Guzman there. I think he's fantastic. And that definitely puts it up to a 2. And I think the B plot is sweet, if you can even call it a B plot.
It's barely a B. Yeah.
The Daphne Martin stuff is nice. I think just the two of them are always kind of cute together. Mm-hmm. They definitely have a nice kind of like father-daughter relationship in a lot of ways.
Especially at the moment when they're at this point of like Daphne's leaving the nest.
Yeah.
And he's realizing that he is going to miss her a lot being around. And I think that's a really sweet thing to see.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before, but it is the fact that Daphne lived with Martin and they had that kind of father-daughter relationship before she got involved with Niles. Mm-hmm. And now she's the daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
It's almost like she's both the daughter and the daughter-in-law. And it's like, you know, oh, my daughter's being married off, but also this new person is joining my family.
Yeah.
And they're the same person.
Both sides.
And it's weird that we're getting both sides of that, but like it does work and it lends itself to quite a few nice moments.
Yeah, I think so.
So I couldn't quite give it a 1, but I was very close to giving it a 1.
That's fair. No, I don't disagree with you. I think Luis Guzman's great. I think he's really funny, but I don't think he's enough to save these. I think any moment that he's in the episode and he adds a little bit of light to it, Frasier just brings that right down. And just irritates me so much. And yeah, you're spot on with the guy who calls him out. And it's like you're rich enough that you don't have to care about this stuff. We do.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you're spot on. Like, call these guys out. Call these Mr. Beamer out.
Mr. BMW.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a disappointing episode, to be honest. Because, I don't know, it has a lot of potential. I don't know, like, it didn't have to be that Frasier's causing a ruckus and making a stand. It could be that they get locked in overnight at the gate and they have to make friends with a security guard or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
The idea of Frasier and Niles being stuck in a car together is funny and could be funny, but here it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
I know we've got a couple of guest stars in this episode.
We do have a few. So there's 3 callers that we get during the time when Roz is waiting at the radio station. Jerry, who's voiced by Billy Bean, who's a baseball player.
Billy Bean.
With the MLB. I don't actually know which team. I didn't bother looking up which team. I'm sorry. I don't care about sports. Mark, who's played by Charles Bush, who was an actor, was in quite a few films. He was in a few episodes of Oz, the TV series, prison series, and in a few films. He was quite well known for performing in drag. I don't know if he necessarily did like kind of traditional drag performances or if it was more like he sort of played characters in drag in the films. And Lily Sobieski which is a name that I definitely recognize, but then looking at her IMDb, I was like, I don't actually know if I've ever seen anything that she's in, but she was in Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh yeah.
She was in is it Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore, film from the 90s. She was in the remake of The Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage as well. I think was maybe her biggest role. She was one of the weird.
Was she one of the bees?
Cultist. She wasn't one of the bees. Although I think her name was Sister Honey, which is quite funny. So she may well have been secretly one of the bees. Yeah. I haven't seen the remake of The Wicker Man. I'm sure it's
the highlights reel from it.
I'm sure it's not good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that she is a very good part of that. Yeah. I'm sure that Lily Sobieski is a very good part of that. Yes. Anyway, oh God.
It's nice to see some guest stars so early in the season.
Yeah.
The last couple of seasons we've had to wait a good few episodes before we get any.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to see them here. Cool. Well, that is Enemy at the Gate. A disappointing follow-up to the opener of the season. But there you go. Next up, we have Proxy Prexy. Or is it Prexy Proxy?
Proxy Prexy.
Proxy Prexy. Try saying that 3 times fast.
Stupid name.
It is very silly. I don't even know what it means. I mean, I know what proxy means. I don't know what the Prexy part of it
I'm guessing it's a play on president. I'm guessing Prexy is...
President.
Yeah. Presumably.
I don't know.
That's where I assumed Prexy came from.
I've never heard the word Prexy before.
I don't think it's a
outside of
real
this
word.
episode.
I think it's... I don't know.
I don't know what it means. Let's just move on. Yeah. The proxy makes sense because the plot of the episode is that Frasier is asking Martin to be his proxy as president of the condo board. He knows that he's an insufferable loser who no one listens to.
Yep.
And he's finally accepted that, but he has some ideas for the condo that will benefit everyone, which he's not wrong. But he asks Martin, who's a bit more, what he says, like streetwise, to help him out. In touch with the common man is a phrase that he uses a few times throughout the show, I think.
Yeah.
Proving how out of touch he is with the common man. But yeah, Martin...
The people's elixir.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man. You must know that no one's going to go for that. But anyway, yeah. So Martin runs for president against Frasier, but we know that that's not really the case. Frasier kind of deliberately screws up the election in favor of Martin, and he's going to be running things behind the scenes. But as the episode goes on, Martin kind of inadvertently at first takes control. Like a couple of the board members kind of see him and say, hey, do you mind if I do this? Do I mind if I move the bins? And Martin's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And Frasier kind of takes that as a bit of a insult on their agreement that he's not listening to Frasier anymore. And then that leads to Martin making a bit of a oopsie when he decides to repaint the parking spaces, which is why he initially got involved in it in the first place. But he didn't think it through like Frasier did. Frasier was waiting for planning permission, and what is it he calls it? It's not proof of concept.
It's a feasibility report?
Yeah, it's something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Must be something official just to make sure that it is like possible. Yeah. But Martin didn't do that, and he eventually gets called out on it at the condo board meeting, and Frasier graciously comes to his rescue in the end after the two have fallen out. And it's an episode.
It sure is.
It's kind of... I did actually have this note for one of the later episodes, but I think it is present here as well, that there's a lot of like reused plot lines from previous episodes that you start picking up on a little bit. We have mentioned it a couple of times in previous seasons.
Yeah.
I think this season it becomes more and more prominent that they're taking elements from previous episodes and kind of mashing them into something new.
Yeah.
We've had the fact that Frasier doesn't get along with the building before. We've had the condo board meetings and running against the president before. We've had Frasier and Martin disagreeing with, how things should be handled in the building before.
Yeah.
And it's all stuff that we have seen. It's just kind of reworked into this new plot. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, I wouldn't say. But the more and more I notice it, the more and more I'm like, I'd maybe rather see something fresh. Give me something new, But maybe I'm being too critical.
I think I would have much rather seen an episode where Martin was just running of his own volition by himself, and it was more about the election process of the two of them competing against each other, campaigning for president against each other, rather than doing this where like they kind of get, it just doesn't really lead anywhere. It's like the concept works, but it doesn't really lend itself to anything particularly good.
Yeah. And Frasier ends up president at the end anyway.
Yeah.
Even after giving the finger to everyone.
Yeah, I guess so.
The condo board. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit... Yeah, there's nothing really fresh, but I think it's quite nice. I think it's quite entertaining to watch the two of them working together and then working against each other and then working together again to get stuff done in the building. I think it's kind of funny. And I was going to say the little B plot's kind of nice as well, but it's actually kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about it. I think I don't know. It doesn't. Yeah. So Roz pops over to Daphne and Niles because she had a really bad date and she's returning the handbag. Is that right?
Yeah.
Her date had the same purse.
Yeah.
And that's how she knew that it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah.
And the two of them have just had a massage. So they're settling down with a fruit salad, a melange, as Niles calls it. Mm-hmm. And when he offers it to Roz mishears him and thinks he says menage.
Yes.
And they kind of poke fun at her for not saying yes or for not saying no quickly enough.
Yeah.
And assume that she wants, or at least are making fun of her for ostensibly wanting to have a threesome with them.
Mm.
And it's just kind of, I don't know, like needlessly cruel.
Yeah.
The way that they're insulting her. Like, that's something you would just laugh about.
Yeah.
You would laugh it off. It's funny, haha, and you would move on. But Daphne and Niles kind of take it really quite far.
Yeah, they take it very seriously, I guess, or not seriously. They definitely take it to heart, and they clearly have it in their heads for quite a long time.
I know. Even after Roz has moved on from it, they're still making fun of her. They get their own back though by that creepy old dude in the Cafe Nervosa. Well, I don't know. I wrote him out. I wrote his name as Mr. Creep, but really,
Mr. Creep.
He was just shooting his shot.
Yeah, he was.
He's just a man who's open-minded about sex, and he was shooting his shot.
He was.
I mean, it didn't hurt anyone. He took no as an answer.
Yeah.
I guess he's not that creepy.
No, I guess not.
Just a man who knows what he likes.
Just a man who wants to film his wife having sex with another man.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're into.
If that's what you're into.
and all parties consent, then yeah, you guys go for it.
Yeah.
We're not here to judge. Mr. Creep.
Mr. Creep.
Yeah, so that little side plot's just kind of, I feel sorry for Roz. It was an honest misunderstanding.
Yeah.
She was just, I don't know, happy to be involved with her friends. She didn't answer too quickly. She had to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I would take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I would take it as a compliment if one of my friends accidentally implied that they would want to have a threesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't hold it against them.
I wouldn't go around insulting them.
Yeah.
Making fun of them. But there you go. That's another side plot that just doesn't really tie into anything.
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. I know this is like, it's a sitcom, and this is what happens with sitcoms. Is like they set up a plot at the beginning, and then it's got the payoff. All sitcoms are going to be formulaic. They're all going to wind up back where they started, because that's what happens in an episode of basically any TV show, but I think sitcoms especially. But these episodes feel so much more like nothing has happened. Like, we get to the end of the episode and nothing of any substance has happened. Nothing has changed. And I think it feels more obvious that nothing's changing and nothing's happening. But I don't know.
Yeah. It just feels like we need some more structure in our side plots. We need them to tie into the main plot a bit more. I think that's how I define a good B plot in an episode. Is when you've got two independent plot lines running simultaneously and they tie into each other at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
But here, yeah, you've just got two completely unrelated plots. Sometimes not even running into each other at all.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, they need to run into each other at some point.
I
even
guess
if they don't build towards the same climax. If they have even bits of them intersecting.
I guess Frasier does go to Cafe Nervosa when Daphne and Niles are there.
Yeah,
but that's like one conversation, and then
he leaves
yes.
before Roz comes in.
I know.
He doesn't even.
There's no.
He isn't even made aware of the whole threesome situation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's yeah. In general, though, I think this episode's not bad. I quite like it. I think we get some great moments with Frasier and Martin. I think him cutting the cake is just so... The looks that they give each other are so satisfying to watch. Frasier coming to Martin's aid at the end, and just the general cringiness of Frasier making an ass of himself in front of the condo board is, I think, actually quite funny. The people's elixir. So I gave it a middle of the road. I gave it another 3.
Another 3
for this disc. Yeah,
I'm actually the same as when you last gave it a 3. I gave it a 2. I don't care for this one.
No,
this is a very too heavy disc, I'm afraid, because it's just sort of boring. I don't think there's much that's really engaging or particularly funny about the main plot. I don't think there's anything really in the B plot either.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I really feel like there's nothing of any substance. There's nothing that makes it bad that would put it down to a 1. But there's nothing that even brings it up to the average quality that Frasier usually has.
That's fair. That's fair.
Unfortunately, I feel like we're getting more and more of that in these episodes. I feel like that's something I'm probably going to be saying quite a lot of at this point in the show. Season 10 sort of getting to be not even formulaic. It just feels kind of lazy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with the reused plot lines.
Yeah,
that there is a lot of stuff that's just, it feels like they're treading old ground,
kind of safe in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
you know, if I give an episode a 1 because it tries to do something and fails and just makes me hate it, at least I'll respect it a little bit for trying to do something different. If it just, plays it totally safe and doesn't do anything to make it bad enough to be a 1, it's still just going to sit at a 2. I'm still not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah. Yeah, not a fan, really. There is a little, well, not even a guest star, but an actress that plays a very, very minor role, the masseuse that we see briefly, and has no lines leaving.
Oh, yeah. Just briefly. I didn't know they were of significance.
Yeah, it's an actress called Sandra Teles, or Tales. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. Teles. She's an Indian actress who has recently been in quite a few different things. She was in Bridgerton. She had a recurring role in Bridgerton on Netflix. She was in The Nun, the Conjuring film. She was one of the nuns in that film. There were lots of nuns in that film. She was in an episode of Doctor Who.
Oh.
She was in The Return of Dr. Mysterio.
Oh, yeah.
The Christmas special from a few years ago. I think she played a reporter or a journalist or something.
Okay.
I think that's the only Doctor Who Christmas special that I've not seen, because that's from that period of the show when I had given up on it before I got back into it.
That's all right. I like it.
But yeah, so it's something I find kind of funny that
is kind of funny. She got a very minor,
tiny role in 2003, and then has been in things much more recently. Yeah. But good for her.
Following on from that, minor roles building up to a much bigger career.
Yeah.
Our next episode has a very special guest star.
Yeah.
Kissing Cousin features Roz's cousin Jen, who has come to town to party and be a general headache for everyone around her. Mm-hmm. But she is played by a very young Zooey Deschanel. So this was but you say back in 2003?
Yeah, I think this was 2003.
2003. No, this would be... Yeah?
Oh, I guess maybe 2002.
Around that time.
End of 2002.
This was one of her first roles in TV or film.
Mm-hmm.
I think she'd only been active since very late 90s. So you're talking the first few years of her career. And she's gone on to do huge things, you know? New Girl and 500 Days of Summer and God, various other things.
Yeah. Yeah, loads and loads of things. I was trying to decide if I needed to bother putting in things to be like, you know who Zooey Deschanel is. I wrote The Happening and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Is she in Happening?
She's in The Happening, yeah. I think she's Mark Wahlberg's love interest in that, isn't
Marky
she?
Mark.
Yeah, Marky Mark.
Yes Man. Oh, she's in Yes Man.
Yes Man,
well,
yeah.
Jim Carrey.
That's a film that I remember quite enjoying when I watched it in maybe 2010.
It's okay if you can get past the creepy age gap between Jim Carrey and Zooey Deschanel. It always makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, Jim Carrey's a little bit weird, isn't he?
He's okay. He's doing his thing.
Yeah.
He's in his own world. It's cool. He's not harming anyone.
Yeah, well, let's hope not.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, let's hope not. God, that'd be some soundbite in a couple of years' time.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not going to hold myself to that, just in case. I want to hope that he's not harming anyone. But anyway, right, getting off course here. Yes, Rose's cousin Jen is in town. She's a typical disillusioned 20-something, what did you call it? Bourgeois. What would you call her? I don't know.
I don't think she's necessarily bourgeois. She's definitely kind of, they talk about like being in her 20s. She's kind of reached the point where she thinks she's smarter than everyone.
Yeah. And very much tells everyone that.
She like sort of kind of hates everything, sort of puts everything down, and yeah. I think I'm still in that stage.
You definitely are.
This is where I am.
The only difference is she's out partying every single night.
That's true. I'm just sitting at home being miserable.
She's dragging Roz out, and Roz ends up not sleeping for days at a time and can't cope anymore. And when she can't cope, Jen just insults her by calling her, is it Maribel? Their
Maribel,
elderly grandma or aunt or whatever.
Yeah.
I love Roz's line. It's one of my favorite lines of the show when I think it's Frasier says to her, like, do you not think you're maybe getting a bit old for this? And she says, hey, there's still a lot of candy left in this piñata. And I just really love that line. I think it's, Roz's little just determination to be young again. It's really sweet. But Jen gets a bit of redemption as a character, despite insulting literally all of our favourites, Frasier, Niles, and Roz, and she doesn't interact with Martin or Daphne, I don't think.
No.
Insults everyone else. But she actually comes to Kenny's aid a little bit.
Yeah.
Kenny is struggling a bit with, it's kind of a superstition, I guess, that if he unpacks his office as the manager of the station, then he'll get fired soon after, because it's happened to him before. So he has this superstition that he doesn't like to unpack, and the two of them hit it off. Kenny and Jen make out, and I don't know what else they get up to, but they end up going to the same party. They don't meet each other, but they end up going to the same party. She was in the meat locker.
In the meat locker.
Kenny's
like a warehouse rave.
Oh, I didn't check there.
Yeah.
Which sounds very sinister.
I don't think I would, yeah.
Yeah. But the two of them are, Jen's planning to head to Vietnam. Kenny's very kind of taken by that. The kind of going out and doing your own thing and just traveling by yourself. And he tries to tag along with her. And she's very sweet about it. She kind of says, like, look, I travel alone, but there's nothing stopping you going. And if we meet up there, great. But I kind of want to go out by myself. And Kenny kind of takes this advice of, like, seizing the moment and just living day by day rather than worrying about things to heart. And we see him, like, unpacking his office and taking out his awards and stuff at the end, which I think is really sweet. I don't know. I like Kenny a lot. I think he's quite often just this bumbling comedic relief in scenes.
Yeah.
And I like him getting a little bit more depth. I think he's a really kind character. I think he's just really nice to everyone, and he deserves a bit more attention. a bit more of the spotlight.
Yeah.
I like Kenny.
Yeah.
I like Kenny a lot.
Kenny's nice.
So the interactions with Jen here, I think, yeah, they're really sweet, despite her being just the worst.
Yeah.
And yeah, Roz kind of accepting her age as well, but still wanting to be young, and she's not quite at the stage where she wants to hang it up completely.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny to watch. She's kind of just struggling with this. This midlife crisis, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, it's really great. You've not said anything about this episode.
No, I mean, I think it's all right. I definitely liked it more now than I did before. I remember quite disliking this episode because I found Jen quite annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I think this time I didn't dislike her as much.
Yeah.
I feel like when I watched her before, I was kind of like, oh, she's just kind of like pretentious and annoying and she's really rude. And then watching it this time, I'm like, well, she's not. The only person that she's kind of rude to is Frasier by implying that Freud is a hack,
mm-hmm.
which he was.
I mean, yeah.
So I don't think it's that bad. And she's actually really quite friendly and charismatic to a lot of people, as much as she comes in and kind of says like, oh, well, I was living in London and London's crap, and you know, Seattle's like everyone's kind of living in the past. It's like it's still the 80s here, and oh, it's such a cliche. I'm in a coffee shop, and like, yeah, she's being a bit over dramatic about stuff like that, but she's very friendly when she meets Niles for the first time and kind of says like, oh, well, tell me about the two of you, and like, I don't know, she seems
what is it she says?
She says something like, Ross says that you're super competitive.
Oh, yeah.
Did your parents withhold affection, or is it just a penis thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't think she's super unpleasant as a character. I think I liked her a lot more watching it now than
fair.
I did when I watched it previously. And they kind of, they make jokes. She says that she's going to Vietnam because like most Americans have never even heard of it. And it's like, okay, saying that Americans have never heard of Vietnam is clearly not true. But saying I want to go to Vietnam to have a look around and kind of experience that because most Americans wouldn't give it a chance is definitely a very fair thing to say. Yeah. Lots of people are just going to like, a lot of people in the States aren't going to want to visit Vietnam.
That's true. Because
they just have opinions of it because of
negative association.
Yeah, because of the war, because of the they didn't call it a war, did they? So they don't call it a war
Special
because if you call
military
it a
operation,
yeah, pretty much,
yeah,
a policing action, I think is what they called it.
Bloody hell!
But that's what I mean. Yeah. Okay, no, we're not going to get into it. We're not getting into the politics.
I don't know enough about.
We're not
the Vietnam
War. That's
War
the whole thing. Is like they don't call it a war because if they called it a war, they'd have to admit that they lost.
Oh yeah, right.
But like a lot of people have negative ideas about Vietnam because of that, and it's really unfair because it's probably a very lovely place to go, and I think it's probably a good idea for young people who weren't alive at that point in history to
experience
come to it with a with a clean slate and a fresh mind, and experience new things that older people are going to be too scared to do.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I don't disagree.
Anyway, so like, yes, but overall, I still don't think it's necessarily that good of an episode. It's all right.
There's not a lot to it.
No, there's not.
There's not really, I don't know, there's not really an overarching plot.
No.
The plot is that Jen has come to town to party with Roz, but it doesn't, again, it's another episode that doesn't really lend itself to anything.
Yeah.
The plot, it's kind of about Kenny and him accepting his position and his place and role and everything, but that's not really the focus of the episode.
Yeah.
There's no real focus, there's no real plot. It's just kind of things are happening and we're watching them happen.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I think it's entertaining enough.
Some of them are funny, some of them aren't so funny. But yeah, so in the end, I give it a 3.
A 3, good.
I did say that it's a low 3. I don't know. It's still a 3.
I give it a 3 as well.
Yeah.
So that's fine. but I probably give it more of a higher 3.
Mm.
I think. Yeah, I like Zooey Deschanel. I think she's great.
Yeah,
I think it's funny seeing her as just this deliberately irritating character.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the time, I think a lot of people dislike her because of the kind of characters that she plays.
Yeah,
and they're irritated by her, but she's not playing deliberately annoying characters, if that makes sense.
She definitely kind of falls into kind of epitomizes the archetype of the manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah,
coming off of like 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah,
and it is nice seeing her in this before she became typecast like that, and she's playing kind of a more cynical character who's a little bit she's not edgy, but she's definitely got more of an edge to her. She's not just that sort of like quirky, fun, happy all the time, like, you know, beret wearing, ukulele playing character that she is in a lot of other things.
Am I to assume that you're one of the people who does not like the type of roles that she plays?
I have not seen many.
Okay.
I'm one of the horrible people who watched 500 Days of Summer, and the first time I watched it rooted for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and then watched it again not that long ago, and I'm like, oh my god, everyone in this movie is horrible.
Oh yeah.
It's just not.
I think if you watch that film as a teenager, right, you're rooting for, I can't remember his name, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. Tom, maybe? Yeah. You're rooting for him, and you're like, oh, this girl broke his heart, and
she led him on, and this and that. But like,
and then you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh my god, this dude's weird.
He has issues.
He has many issues.
He has issues that he is projecting onto this poor woman.
Like, she laid her boundaries out. She's a strong, independent woman.
Yeah. He just hands her the reins to his emotional state very early on. They're co-workers. They have just met. And yeah, it's a whole thing. But like, it's because of that she kind of got... And I think Yes Man, which you mentioned as well, she sort of plays a similar character in that, where she's kind of
not
like...
quite as bad. She's kind of a bit more well-rounded there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The focus isn't as much as her on like as a romantic interest.
Mm-hmm.
She's more just kind of this free-spirited... What is it? They do hula hooping or something, don't they? It's been a while since I've seen it.
It's been a long time since I've seen that
like
film.
A dance instructor or something. And
yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we've agreed we do like her, just not always the roles that she plays.
Yeah. No, I do. Like, I definitely. It's the fact that she's typecast as these characters. That's what I don't like. I really like seeing her in something like this, where she's playing a slightly more cynical character.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I think she's really good at it.
I was going to say, do we have a guest star?
There is.
Yeah.
There's a guest call. So we get right at the end, Roz is starting to get sick of going out partying and trying to stay young, and she's kind of settling back into the fact that she's getting older. And we get a call from Stu, who is going through the same thing. His girlfriend wants to move in with him.
Yes.
And he knows that he's not going to be able to live his bachelor lifestyle
he's
anymore.
He's going to have to give up on...
They've been together for years, and he's like in his late 40s.
I think they say he's 47.
47.
Yeah.
And he's like not willing to give it up and whatever, and then Roz kind of chews him out. And
it's like, I got some advice for you. Grow up.
Yeah. It's very funny. And I think this is actually one of the few times where I didn't know that this is who the guest caller was, but I heard his voice and was immediately like, oh my God, is that who I think it is? Yeah. It's Bradley Whitford.
Oh yeah.
Who I love Bradley Whitford. I think he's so great in everything. In Get Out is something he was in recently that's quite well known for. He was the dad. Mm-hmm. He was in Cabin in the Woods, which is another film that I absolutely love.
Yep. He's a scientist.
He's in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, he's in a lot of guest parts.
Jake's dad in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Is a really good role in that. I think he's a really great character there.
Is he not one of the dads in How I Met Your Mother as well? Am I imagining that?
No.
Is that not him?
No. He's not one of the main character's dads. I'm thinking of all the actors that play the main character's dads. He does really remind me of, he's quite similar to the guy that plays Ted's dad in How I Met Your Mother. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name.
It's not Bradley Whitford, no.
But the two of them they are quite similar characters.
It's Chris Elliott's one of them, isn't
Chris
he?
Elliott
and John Lithgow
is Lily's dad, and John Lithgow's Barney's dad. And yeah, I can't remember the actors that play the others, but Bradley Whitford isn't.
Yeah, it's not Bradley Whitford.
But Bradley Whitford is really good.
He's done a lot of like guest roles and stuff as well.
Yeah,
and he's been in like Law and Order and things like that. And he's done a lot of stuff, and he's an advocate for a lot of good causes as well. He seems like a good guy.
He was in What If, the Marvel series. He was in
in What If?
In the Captain Carter episode.
Yeah,
he's like the military guy that's trying to stop her from actually going out into the field. Kind of wants her to just be like a figurehead or whatever.
Okay.
Kind of like just like a little voice role there.
The Tommy Lee Jones of
the Tommy Lee Jones of that one. Yeah.
We're getting into the nerdy stuff now.
We are, yeah.
Marvel nerdy stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, he was in that.
Yeah.
I think that was the other time that I recognized his voice. I was like, oh my God, it's Bradley Whitford.
Like, see, when you watch him in stuff, live action stuff, he doesn't have like that noticeable a voice. Mm-hmm. You don't kind of clock it.
Yeah.
But then when you hear him in things, just his voice, you're like, nah, I know who that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's one of those people. Good. Bradley Whitford. And that's Kissing Cousin.
Yep.
Next up, Halloween episode. We're quite far away from Halloween, actually. I was going to say Halloween's just passed, but it was
a month ago.
A month. We are now getting into Christmas territory. Tales from the Crypt. Another Halloween episode. Another recycled plot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We have another prank war between Bulldog and Frasier.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Am I being silly here? Or have we not seen the episode where Bulldog comes back to KACL?
We have.
What episode was it?
It
and why can't I remember?
Is the 200th or the 2000th or whatever it's called.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right.
Because they set up that it's like, oh, we've got a special guest. And you think it's going to be Bill Gates.
Comes in.
And then it's Bulldog.
Yes.
And he kind of says like, oh, well, I'm working in the archives, but get me back on the air. And you kind of...
You're absolutely right. Thank you. Because that was bugging me that I couldn't remember what episode it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, because they come into this episode and he's just kicking about.
Yeah.
And I was like, have we seen the episode where he gets rehired?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, because that would have really annoyed me if I couldn't remember that. But yeah, it's, again, another like prank war episode between Frasier and Bulldog. It's a lot more focused on, there's not really much of a back and forward. There's a back, which is Bulldog pranking Frasier with a trashed up BMW that he found at the scrapyard. And then the rest of the episode is the forward, which is Frasier trying to figure out how he's going to get his own back on Bulldog.
Yeah.
I quite like it. I think it's quite funny. I think it has a lot of good lines. I think anything with Bulldog is a treat.
Mm-hmm.
I love Dan Butler. I think he's amazing. We get the famous "I'm pro opera and I vote" quote from this episode. The bumper sticker on the back of Frasier's car.
Yeah.
And subsequently on the back of Bulldog's jacket as well in the episode. But other than that, it feels like there's quite a long... It feels like quite a long episode to get for what is not a huge payoff.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we get the initial setup, which is like Bulldog running into Roz's booth and saying, haha, I pranked Frasier. I got him. And then from there, for virtually the remainder of the episode, Frasier is plotting out. Initially, he plans something like a psychological warfare with a red balloon. Mm-hmm. He's going to like Pavlov's bell Bulldog, but with a red balloon and cause him like proper fear. Which, if that worked, is like horrific.
Yeah.
Imagine causing someone's like phobia.
Yeah.
Like igniting a phobia within someone. That's pretty horrible.
One of my friends caused me to develop a phobia.
Of what?
Or some of my friends.
Dare I ask?
They we used to go around to my friend's flat to play Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Nerd.
Set up for me being a massive nerd, right? So we would go into my friend's flat to play Dungeons and Dragons. We'd be there for several hours. So at some point, usually multiple points during the game, I would get up and go to the bathroom, as everyone would. Every time I went to the bathroom, someone would get up, stand outside the bathroom door, and jump out and give me a fright whenever I walked out. They did that several times a session, and that was once a week for maybe 3 years. To this day, it reaches the point where every so often I'm like, I go to the bathroom, and when I go to leave the bathroom, I have this fear of walking out because I think someone's going to jump out and scare me.
You realize you should not have told me that, right?
Yeah, probably not.
That was a mistake. Because I'm going to hold on to that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use that at some point.
Yeah.
You fool.
Yeah. But anyway, so the thing with the red balloon made me think of Darren Brown, the I don't know if you call him a magician. Is he a magician? He did like sort of hypnotism stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what you would
TV personality.
Describe
People
him
might
as.
not know him in other parts of the world. He's quite well known.
He's
here
very
in the
famous
UK.
in the UK. Yeah.
He had a series of TV specials where he kind of talked about like the psychology of different things and like how can you manipulate people into doing things through all like suggestion and stuff like that. And there was one that he did that was all about trying to convince someone to confess to a murder that they hadn't committed.
Yep. I remember that.
And it was like in like an isolated hotel, they got this guy in. It was like he was going to a conference, and they had a doorbell that they played that like rang through. You could like hear it throughout the hotel when it went off, and they would play it. They would kind of set up these situations where he felt guilty about things, and then they would ring the doorbell, and then he started to associate hearing the doorbell with feeling guilty. And then they did all this stuff to make him like kind of doubt his senses and make him feel like he was going insane. And then they went, someone's been found dead. The police are coming. Everyone, like, stay in your rooms. This is we're having a lockdown because someone's been murdered. And then they do they ring the doorbell, and then he feels guilty. He becomes convinced that he's the one that committed the murder because of the guilt. Mm-hmm. It's a whole thing. But that made me think of that. Like, clearly it is possible.
Yeah.
To get that kind of response from someone.
It's pretty horrible, though. Imagine, like...
I mean... yeah, like, I don't know how they got away with doing that at, like, 7 o'clock on a Friday evening on national television. But, yeah, it's...
Actually, like...
Clearly is possible.
Altering someone's mindset. Yeah. It's pretty terrifying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But Frasier doesn't go with that. He goes with the much simpler approach of zombies.
He's so stupid. He's so stupid. Why would you try and prank someone with zombies?
I mean,
if someone
down in a dark basement jumping out at you, it would scare someone.
Jumping out at you is one thing.
Well, okay, yeah. But
getting in actors dressed as zombies, dressed as like high school footballer, prom dress wearing zombies in the archive room of a radio station
over Halloween.
On Halloween,
when he knows that he's just pranked someone. Yeah, I guess it doesn't.
There is no way that Bulldog ever in a million years would have believed that for a second.
Yeah.
But
that's why I think it works out in the end, that Frasier kind of realizes that the real enemy are the people who doubt that he has a sense of humor, and that he can pull something like this off, namely Roz and Martin. So he teams up with Bulldog. And I kind of like that. I like that he kind of recognizes, okay, maybe I'm targeting the wrong person. Bulldog's always going to be Bulldog. He's always going to pull these pranks. He's always going to do this stuff, and he's obviously good at it. Maybe I should be targeting the people who are actually being, like, uncharacteristically cruel to me and saying I can't pull this off. So I do like that he gets them in the end.
Yeah.
I think it's good. What do you think of the side plot, the B plot?
I hate it.
Gertrude versus the neighborhood kid.
Beans.
This is Beans.
The second appearance of
Stephen Anthony Lawrence.
Yeah. The second appearance in a Halloween episode.
It is another Halloween episode, isn't it? Room full of heroes.
If I had a nickel for every time that happened.
Yeah.
I'd have 2 nickels.
I'd have 2 nickels.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what it was, which episode it was, or what scene it was I was talking about, but I have definitely mentioned it before on the podcast. My least favorite trope from anything, from any piece of media ever, is adults acting like children.
I think you've said that before. I think you said that before recently.
It was probably not that long ago, but I can't remember what it was. But it's something about that makes my skin crawl. I can't stand it. And Gertrude doing that, it just compounds. It's like, it's 10 times worse because it's a character that I already dislike doing it. And I hate it so much. This honestly might be my least favorite episode of Frasier ever, purely because of this.
Really?
I really cannot stand it.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here and tell you that this is one of the very, very few Gertrude appearances that I actually quite like.
Oh, God.
I actually find it really funny because I don't see it as her acting like a child. I see it as her acting as the belligerent adult who is sick of children. And I actually quite like that. I think that's actually quite funny that she's getting her own back and all these neighborhood children that are just so, like, awful in the building. And the fact that she does, like, what is it? She tells the delivery driver to go and deliver a like toilet training doll to his school. She puts Vaseline on his doorknob, takes the chain off his bike. What else is like? I think like they're like grown up pranks, but to a child.
Yeah,
which I think's really funny. She's still like Gertrude in it, so she's still irritating, but I don't know. I don't hate this one quite as much as other ones, I'm afraid to say. Sorry.
Oh, you don't have to apologize to me. I don't. Yeah, you can enjoy whatever you enjoy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference to me.
So
I
just how low did you rank this episode?
This is a 1.
Really?
This is absolutely a 1.
Oh,
I
man.
can't stand it. Like, there are aspects of the main plot with Frasier and Bulldog that I think are quite funny, but I don't even think it's that good because it annoys me that we've seen it before.
Yeah.
And it's been done better several times. It annoys me that we barely get any Bulldog. He's in the beginning, we see him pulling the prank on Frasier.
Yeah.
And then right at the end, we kind of see, but he doesn't even really do anything. There's not that much that
There's
he
not
does.
There's
That's
not
funny.
much Bulldog.
He's kind of just there at the end. So that's not enough to save it. It's a 1. I hate it. I hate it so much.
I gave it a 3. Another 3.
Mm.
I quite like it. I think it's a decent episode. I'd probably give it a high 3, to be honest. I veered on giving it a 4, but I think that's maybe a little bit too kind.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of lacking something. I think the previous prank war episodes are a lot funnier. I think the pranks in them have a lot more to them, and a lot more opportunities for comedic moments. Whereas here, we've only got 2 pranks, one against the other.
Yeah.
If you ignore the whole Gertrude side plot. So the Bulldog's prank initially of replacing the BMW is funny, and I think that's great. But then Frasier's spending the whole episode figuring out this other prank with the zombies and stuff, kind of loses its charm watching it towards the end. You're like, okay, so now we're going to do the plot. Okay, yeah, I guess it's kind of funny. And Bulldog shoots him with a fake gun, and they pull a 180 on him, which is clever, and I like that it kind of comes back and it's a bit unexpected. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot missing from the middle of the episode. It's the start and the end that really are the highlights, which is a shame. But yeah, we get Bulldog. We get I'm pro opera and I vote, which you have to give it points for because that's such a great line.
I have a mug with that on it.
You do?
Thanks to you.
I do.
It's my favorite mug.
That was a few years ago I gave you that.
Yeah.
No, I think it's decent episode. Nothing overly special. And any guest stars? Guest callers?
No.
None in this?
Beyond, we've got Stephen Anthony Lawrence, as you mentioned.
Guest star, sorry. Yeah, cool. Well, move on to the last episode on the disc.
Mm-hmm.
Star Mitzvah.
Yeah.
Which I think you've mentioned. We were discussing the timeline of Frederick's involvement in the show.
Yeah.
I kind of forget where this one's placed a lot. I think it's a bit earlier.
Yeah, I was confused.
I can't remember.
It was, so I guess not his last appearance, because his last appearance was War of the Words in season 9. So the one before that was Cranes Unplugged, which is season 8.
Yep.
They say at the beginning, Roz says like, "Oh, how old is Frederick now?" And Frasier says he's 13. And this is
really?
2 years after that. He's just turned 13 and is now having his bar mitzvah.
I never picked up on that.
That bothers me so much.
I never picked up on that.
I try not to hold against it. I'm not including that in my rankings for the episode.
Yeah.
I promise I'm not being that pedantic.
It's
but
a
like
bit, yeah,
that
canon breaking.
I can't not think about that. It always bugs me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I saw a thing recently. There was a discussion going on about a series and about how basically the writers weren't sticking to the canon of the show, and there was a quote either from one of the writers or one of the viewers who just happened to get a bit of traction behind it, and they said like a good episode shouldn't interrupt the canon of a show, basically.
Yeah.
And the whole point was that like if you've got a good plot and it breaks canon, just do it.
Yeah.
If it's a good enough episode, just do it. Like don't worry too much. And I think this episode gets away with it.
Yeah. It does.
I like this episode a lot.
It does.
So Star Mitzvah, it's bar mitzvah time. Bar mitzvah's male, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bat mitzvahs for girls.
Yeah.
Or women, I suppose.
Women. You got me in trouble last week for saying female.
For saying females. You didn't say female. Yeah, don't use female as
I just said male there.
Weird. Yeah, well, yeah, but that's fine.
What's the difference?
People who use female as a noun are weird. You always see people being like, females do this and females do that, and they're always arseholes.
Yeah, but in that context, that's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't say it in that context. I was just like,
still.
Just woman. Right.
Not in the sense that I'm getting you in trouble, more in the sense that if you refer to women as females, people might assume that you're weird.
I don't regularly. It's just
yeah.
I'm usually very gender neutral in my description of people.
Yeah. That's fine.
It was just pertinent to the context last week.
Yeah.
And the same here. It's very much cut and dry, male female for bar and bat mitzvah.
Yeah,
that is correct.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever. Right. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's Freddie's bar mitzvah, and we get a sort of little opening scene of Frederick and Lilith in Boston, I presume, going over the plans, and Freddie's joking about, or Lilith's sort of annoyed that Frederick's invited so many people, and he's saying, I'll cut down the list of people, and it cuts to KCL with Kenny saying that he's been invited, and then it's the guy from what's the episode?
Love Stinks.
Jason? No,
Jason.
It is Jason, yeah. So he says that he's got an invite as well. It's like, why are all these people invited? But it's, yeah, I quite like that little flash cut between them. It was really funny. So Frasier's planning to do a speech in Hebrew to honor Frederick. I quite like the undertones to this episode, that there's a lot of respect for different religions. It's not. He does kind of mention it. The rabbi, I think, mentions it. Says like, even though he's not of this religion, Frederick's dad would like to do a speech in Hebrew. And there's kind of other moments as well. I think, is it Roz that asks? Who is it? Someone asks Frasier if it's strange having his son be a different religion from you. Can't remember who it is. And he kind of says no, because it was Lilith that raised him
Yeah.
Mostly, so it doesn't bother me. But I kind of like that, just the sort of undertone that it's very amicable between everyone.
People aren't weird about it.
Yeah, and it's not really...
There's no jokes about the fact that you've got Jewish people. That
no, it's...
A lesser sitcom would have just bought into stereotypes and been weird.
Yeah, so I quite like that. It's very much not really the focus, but I like that it's kind of there, that there's this respect between everyone. So yeah, he enlists Noel's help. Noel just happens to know Hebrew.
Yeah.
He also happens to know Klingon.
Yeah.
So when Frasier gets on his bad side, when he doesn't get Scott Bakula's autograph,
yeah,
things don't go Frasier's way, unfortunately. I really don't like the scene where Frasier calls Noel out. I feel so sorry for Noel, because he's weird. Yeah, he's a massive nerd. But Frasier's so cruel to him because he promised Noel that he would get the autograph. And it just feels really cruel to him then be insulting Noel about his lifestyle and his like hobbies and pleasures when he's the one who didn't do what he promised.
Yeah.
Just because he didn't think it was worthwhile. I think it's such a shame. So I think he's quite right to get his own back on Frasier. Unfortunately, he didn't know that gift of... whose wig is it? Someone's wig.
It's Joan Collins' wig from an episode of the Star Trek, the original series.
Oh, okay. You're more of a Trekkie than I am.
I think probably the highest rated is one that a lot of people will say is the best episode of Star Trek, the original series, called City on the Edge of Forever, where Kirk and Spock go back in time to New York in the 1920s or 1930s.
Oh, I've seen that.
And Joan Collins is playing a guest role.
All right. Scott Bakula's not Star Trek, is he?
He is, but he was Star Trek Enterprise, which was
the
one that was, I think, would have still been coming out at this point.
Right.
It was very late 90s into the 2000s.
Was he not another series as well? Was he not Battlestar Galactica or something as well?
I think he maybe did Stargate.
Or Stargate, maybe.
Did Scott Bakula No, Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap.
He was Quantum Leap.
Okay. Was he Mr. Quantum?
He was Mr. Leap.
Yeah, I can't remember. Like, yeah, I'm not a huge Star Trek fan at all, so you need to keep me right on these sort of references.
Actually, I have a couple of notes about how it ties in with Star Trek in this episode, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, like a few people have commented on it that it's a bit weird that Noel wants to get Scott Bakula's autograph because lots of people who are fans of Star Trek don't like Enterprise. It's often looked at, or at least at that time, was looked at as being the worst Star Trek series. There have been a few new Star Trek series in recent years that I think a lot of people don't like. I haven't even bothered watching them, the most recent few, but that's maybe just because I'm picky.
It's still Star Trek. At the end of the day,
it's still Star Trek. Yeah.
It's still at its heart, the show. And
there are a lot of people that
like it,
There are a lot of people that look at it as like, oh, the new ones are too silly, they're too weird, and there are people that talk about how the new ones are too gay. Star Trek Discovery has openly gay characters.
Mr. William Shatner's tight trousers and very, very tight tops. I mean,
the whole reason
that was pretty gay.
The whole reason that slash fiction, like erotic fan fiction, is what it is now is because of housewives in the 1960s watching Star Trek and writing their own stories about Kirk and Spock having sex.
That tracks, yeah.
So it was that. Honestly, it was that and Starsky and Hutch. For the same reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, people complain now that Star Trek is too gay, and they're idiots because Star Trek's always been incredibly gay.
Oh, everything's too woke these days.
It is,
you know.
Of course,
people complain about anything.
Of course, it's too woke. But yeah.
Oh God, could you imagine if Frasier came out these days? The episode where Martin dates Cora.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Oh, people
backlash?
There must have been at the time. There must have been. People say this. I thought something I saw recently that I thought was really funny. Lots of people have said, coming off of the back of like COVID and kind of mask mandates, people have said a lot of things about like, oh, could you imagine if people tried to make seatbelts mandatory now? people would overreact and it would be ridiculous. And then someone shared some news footage from whenever it was I think it was the 60s, might have been into the 70s, when seatbelts were actually officially made mandatory. And the way that people reacted then, people have always just been stupid. They don't like being inconvenienced. They don't like having anything challenge their ideals.
They don't like following rules.
Ever. So, yeah.
Everyone's out to get you and
people probably did.
Control your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We can say now that, like, people would react badly seeing, like, Martin and Cora being in an interracial relationship on.
It's just more nowadays. This whole argument of like woke is just such a catch-all for people to be like racist and homophobic and transphobic and everything. It's like if any actors who are not straight white males exist in a show or a movie, it's like, this show's political. Too woke. It's like, oh my God, shut up.
Oh God, actually, yeah. Getting back into Star Trek, that's something that William Shatner said recently, was that he thinks modern Star Trek's too political.
That doesn't surprise me.
And it's like, which is wild, because Star Trek has always been about politics, always. And then someone said, like, well, what about these episodes that you did in the 1960s that were about like civil rights and that were about racism and that were about xenophobia and whatever? And he was like, oh, well, those were like social whatever. He was like, that they weren't political, they were like social commentary. And it's like, how is that different from
what being do you think political? Politics is?
Oh my God. People are so stupid.
I love the argument when people are like, oh, this isn't political, because they genuinely think because the thing is not about politics.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not focusing on like the government, it means it's not political.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I echo your statement. People are just stupid.
People are stupid.
We've not even finished this episode. Let's finish this episode first and then we can rant. Yeah, so Frasier does end up going to the bar mitzvah. He ends up giving his speech, but Noel has taught him it in Klingon rather than in Hebrew. Which you would think he would know at least like a little bit of Hebrew to recognize the difference.
Yeah.
I think I would probably notice the difference, and I know nothing in either language.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just more with it than Frasier.
Maybe.
Yeah. But I think it's really funny watching him do the speech, and the rabbi's kind of like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But it turns out sweet when one of Frederick's classmates he translates for him and reads the speech back to Freddie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy Berman.
Jeremy Berman. Jeremy Beramy.
Jeremy Beramy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of a sweet little episode. I think it's really nice. It's sort of Frederick's coming of age, and even though he's been 13 for 2 years.
Yeah.
We've got a funny, like, the sort of lead into that plot is Frasier getting pranked once again.
Yeah.
This time by Noel, but also getting his deserved payback, I would say, if you exclude the Joan Collins wig.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of little, like, just like nice little moments. I think the comedic timing of Martin's camera is great.
Yeah.
I think its introduction when Frasier gets flashed, and then when Frasier runs out the apartment after mentioning Niles' ex-girlfriend, is great. And the flash of when Lilith is doing the speech as well. It just, the timing of it's really, really funny. Yeah, no, it's a good episode. It's a really good episode. I like it.
Yeah, I really like it.
Easily the highlight of the disc.
Yeah,
in terms of episode scores.
Yeah, it's the best episode on the disc in my opinion.
What did you rank it then?
So I gave it a 4.
Cool.
I really like it. I think it's I think the premise is really unique. And like, I mean, I've complained about other episodes in this disc, and it's probably more throughout this season, or just at any point from now on. I'll be complaining about some episodes feeling a bit unoriginal or a bit, formulaic, playing on tropes more and more. But this episode does feel it's an interesting setup.
I know what you mean.
It's never been done before. It's unique, and it works well.
Yeah.
Lends itself to a lot of really good jokes. I think even like ignoring all of the weird Star Trek stuff and ignoring all of like Noel playing a prank on Frasier, having an episode centered around a bar mitzvah is unique enough on its own. I think there's probably not many other.
It's a little bit of a played on
shows that would do that
more recently. I think there's quite a few sitcoms that have Jewish characters and focus on like bar mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen quite. I can think off the top of my head at least like 3.
Okay, fair
in
enough.
recent memory. But probably at this time, it was a bit more unique.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I agree. I gave it a 4 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I quite like it. I think it's really. I like that Frederick's more of a focus as the guest star. I think even though Bebe Neuwirth is in it as Lilith, I think she doesn't feel like a guest star for once.
Mm.
She very much feels like the guest star's mother, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of like. I like that she's just kind of there as part of the cast. There's not a big deal made about her being the center of attention. Which kind of got me thinking, like, I wonder if we could have Lilith and Frederick in it more regularly as like regular cast members, and if it would still work or not, or if it works better as them being guest stars.
Yeah.
I don't know. That wasn't really an answer. I was kind of like posing that question to myself.
Yeah.
Just watching it.
Yeah. I mean, you know how I feel about Lilith and about Bebe Neuwirth.
Yeah.
I would like always love to see more. But yeah, I think part of the reason that they work so well as characters when we do see them is because they're not in it that often.
Yeah.
I think if we got that much more of them, it would make it less special.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. The more you do it, the less special it becomes.
Yeah. Good advice.
There's one joke in this that always makes me laugh. The when Frasier says that he used to call Frederick his little bald candy man,
mm-hmm.
and then Roz says to him, she like starts the sentence and says like, "Oh yeah, I had a boyfriend that," and then she kind of trails off and realizes what she's about to say.
Yeah.
And like moves on. There's a big like audience laugh, and then she kind of moves on to another topic.
Yeah.
And there's something about just the behavior of Perry Gilpin in that scene that's really just like nails the awkwardness.
Very funny.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really good. Cool. But we're ending on a high, at least. Mm-hmm. Star Mitzvah's a good episode to round off the disc. Yeah, it's kind of up and down. I don't know. Season 10, you were saying, I think last week, that season 10's a little bit of a dip in quality. I don't know if I've noticed that yet.
Yeah.
At least with this first disc. And I've watched a little bit ahead with the next disc as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'd agree yet.
Yeah.
Enemy at the Gate is pretty disappointing. I think that's a really weak episode.
Definitely.
But I can't think of... I will need to refresh my memory of what's coming up later on in the season. But yeah, I don't know if there's any that I would strictly say are that much worse.
Yeah.
I might be proven wrong. That's fine if I am. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any highlights for this disc?
Oof.
Anything you'd like to draw our attention to?
I don't really know what I would want to pick. Do you have something in mind? Do you want to go first if you have something in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few little quotes. I think I'll go with the one that I've not mentioned during the episode. I've said that Roz's line about there's still a lot of candy left in this piñata, I think it's really funny. Her joke about the little bald candy man and I'm pro-opera and I vote is like a classic. But the one I really like is from Kissing Cousin. It's when, after Frasier has met Jen, he and Niles are in Cafe Nervosa, just catching up. And he says the line, "She told me that my show was bourgeois. I then argued that anything that has mass appeal could be called bourgeois. She then said that my argument was bourgeois." Which I happen to find jejune. And I don't know, there's something about the flow of that quote that I think is really funny. I can't do it justice, but I think the way that Kelsey Grammer delivers it is really funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'll give it to that.
Yeah, that's a good joke. I like that one. I probably have to give it to something in Star Mitzvah. I think actually there's one line delivery that I really enjoy is when just after Frasier has embarrassed Frederick by giving his speech in Klingon, and they finish off the ceremony, and the rabbi goes away, and Frederick's still kind of up on the stage, and his friend from school, Jeremy, comes up onto stage and says like, "Oh, nice bar mitzvah, Gaylord," and because Frederick's middle name is Gaylord, and then Frederick, like, with this like real contempt in his voice, just goes, "Shut up, Berman." And the delivery there, I think, is so funny.
Yeah.
I think this is really the point. I suppose it's fitting with it being his bar mitzvah. This is the point where I think we're really starting to see Trevor Einhorn going from like child actor into an actual actor. Like we're really getting like some of his like mannerisms himself.
Yeah, like Trevor Einhorn when he starts out, like he is very much a child actor.
Yeah,
and to no disrespect to him, like that's how a lot of people start out. He is noticeably lacking in certain areas of acting ability. Yeah. But yeah, as he grows and as we see him throughout the show, like I think War of the Words as well, actually, he's very good in. I think he's really, really funny. And here, and then obviously we've got one more episode with him in the next season, which is hilarious, but for completely different reasons. Yeah. And I think he does a great job in that as well. I think
he does really well in that. I'm excited to talk. That's one I am excited to talk about.
Yeah. So I completely agree. I think today he has become a man.
He's starting to come into his own, and that delivery. And then there's a line. Almost give it my highlight too is after the bar mitzvah was finished, when they're all kind of gathering, and the rabbi comes up to Frasier and Lilith and just says, "You must be very proud of Frederick, not of yourselves." And walks away. He's very funny. Actually, I did write down it was the actor insult. The actor that played the rabbi, Corey Fisher. Not particularly well known for a few different things, but he was in MASH. No. I think he was in a couple of episodes of the TV series, but he was in the film that predated the TV series as well. Right. Which I thought was interesting. Yeah. So there you go. But I think he's very good. I think he's quite a funny.
He is quite funny. He's very dry wit.
Yeah.
Throughout. Yeah. Well, the disc 1 already.
Yeah.
It just scares me how quickly we're flying through this.
Yeah, I know.
Every time we finish an episode, I'm like, oh my god, we're getting closer to the end.
So now we've got 7 episodes left now.
Oh, scary stuff.
Counting down.
Scary stuff. Well, thank you all for joining us once again for a new season. Make sure to keep up to date with us on Twitter and YouTubes and wherever else. I don't know where else we can find us. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's where we keep things up to date.
Yeah. I've been trying harder now to put stuff on Instagram.
Actually, no, you've been doing well on Instagram. Yeah, sorry, considering Instagram as well.
I did neglect Instagram for a little while, but now that Twitter is starting to collapse.
Yeah. Maybe we should get a Hive as well.
Yeah, people are starting to go into Hive. I heard one of my friends the other day was saying that he signed up to Hive, kind of preempting that that's what people are going to be moving to. And apparently the first thing he saw was a picture of someone's penis.
Nice.
And so I think it's pretty obvious that Hive is just totally unmoderated at this point.
It's fine. Come to Hive, see our penises.
It's the Wild West. I'm not putting a picture of my penis on Hive.
You have to go to our exclusive Patreon for that.
Yes, if you want to see dick pics, it'll be on Patreon.
We actually don't have a Patreon.
$25 a month.
No, we're not. Let's not go down that route. That's the desperation route. When we get fired from our jobs for making penis jokes online, then we turn to Patreon.
OnlyFans.
The only Frasier podcast with a penis Patreon. I'm fairly confident in that.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, I don't know. Maybe Will and Jace are up to.
Maybe Will and Jace do have
some recent ventures.
Yeah.
I hope they know we're joking.
I
don't know if they listen to the podcast at all.
I have no idea.
I hope they know we're joking.
Maybe Kevin Smith has a penis Patreon.
Maybe. Is he still doing Talk Salad? I think they stopped.
I don't know. They may well have finished. I don't know how long it went on for.
Scott Mosier as well.
Yeah.
No, it was Matt. No, it's the other boy. The other producer from his show. Is it not?
I'm not sure.
Can't remember his name. I want to say Matt Mercer, but it's not Matt Mercer. He's the voice actor.
Yeah.
Can't remember. But yes, yes. That's us. All good. Keep up to date.
Yeah.
10,000
Yes.
views. Woo!
If anyone has any suggestions for other social media they want us to be on that will help you.
Except OnlyFans. That was a
Except
joke.
OnlyFans. That was a joke. Yeah. I don't know. Tumblr? I know that people go back and forth on whether Tumblr is worth having or not.
I've still got a Tumblr.
I've still got a Tumblr. I use it
for years.
fairly regularly. I quite like having a Tumblr, but that's for more personal stuff. I don't know how good it would be for posting updates and
maybe
podcasty things.
Hugely. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, that's us for another week. So, with that, I hope you all have a great day, good mental health, and thank you for listening. This has been a Happy Brothers podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HappyBrosPod.
All opinions are our own, and as always, special thanks to Leah O'Donnell for the show's artwork.